Okay, so let's just start from the beginning. On the screen here, as well as Omnisphere, you'll see Logic, which is my workstation. I assume that you know about Logic and digital audio workstations because the scope of this video can't cover that sort of thing. I've got Omnisphere here, and I've got a number of other things that I want to talk you through. So I mentioned in the introductory video the beauty of Omnisphere is it combines both a sound source model and also a synthesis model, and I want to kind of explain both what those two things are. So if we just leave Omnisphere there for the moment and bring up this here, which is called a test oscillator. Tell me, well, you can't tell me, but ask yourself, have you ever heard this sound before? Right? It's a sine wave, as it says there, right? And a sine wave is a computer-generated sound that is a perfect waveform, essentially. I'm putting it quite simply. And it's totally generated from within the computer in computer language. Again, to put things very simply. So this is something that can't be created, I suppose, in real life or without a computer, because sounds have the sounds are way more complex than just the simple waveform that you see right there on the screen. So for example, white noise is way more complex. It sounds like that. You know, pink noise is slightly different. You know, a bit softer. Square wave, a bit harder, and then needle pulse. Right? So you can see that the shape of the waveform there actually changes the sound, right? But it doesn't change the tone. You know, frequency is different if I push this up. Right? All created by the computer. So that is synthesis. Now, those sounds that you heard there aren't the best musical instruments in the world, are they? So over time, since that was first basically created, the ability to do that with computers, synthesizers have developed into be able to, you know, design lots of different waveforms and a whole load of other stuff, oscillation, filtering, stuff like that, and you get, right? So this is Logic's retro synth, which has a load of stuff. I won't be going through this sort of thing, but you see things like the oscillator here, filters, effects, amps, LFOs, glide, the shape of the waveform. All of these different things are within Omnisphere's synthesis capability, right? So the other thing that we want to mention is the sound source. So that's a retro synth. All of the kind of the output of that instrument is coming from Logic's processing, I suppose, and that's coming out of the computer's speakers. So no one's ever recorded a retro synth for that computer there, for that VST. However, for example, things like Spitfire libraries and lots of other virtual instruments, they have recorded real instruments and made them into virtual instruments. So if you listen to this, right? So this is the Skilo Kanga, I can never pronounce it, harp, which is a real harp, right? Right, it's a real harp. And each one of those little samples was recorded meticulously and then kind of put inside the program, which can then go into Kontakt. So it's a sample library being played inside Kontakt, which I'm not even sure how to define Kontakt. It's a thing that plays sample libraries. And you can do a lot of stuff with it. But essentially it's coming from a recording. So anyway, there's my long-winded explanation. So those are the two types of things. Sound source is something like the harp, and the synthesis is like the retro synth or the sine wave. The thing you can do, obviously, with something like Kontakt is that you can layer two sample libraries on top of each other. So these are two things from Spitfire, who I absolutely love. So here's a harp on top of another instrument called Eva Grid Strings. Right, really cool. So you can make a really interesting sound and a very interesting instrument, not just to play live, but also to, you know, to feature in your compositions. And so I've sort of layered those together, right? So that's a feature I want you to bookmark here, is being able to play two sounds at once inside one kind of bucket or case, right? So now we've done all of these things. We've also got Omnisphere up at the top with the default sound that it comes with. I want to do something really interesting, right? So say I've got all these interesting sounds here, maybe not the sine test oscillator, but these things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put them all into one playable instrument, sort of like a multi-instrument, right? So let me just do this. So this is called creating a track stack in Logic. And it's asking me, do I want it to sum or be a folder? And summing will mean that I can play them all together. You'll see what I mean. So I'm going to click sum and OK. So now you can see these are all sub of the sum 3. And if I play now, all of those instruments are playing together. Kind of a weird sound. But you can see that all of that is combining to make one really interesting sound. Anyway, so this is all to say that that Omnisphere does all of that on its own, right? So if we take that out of that summing stack, we don't need to do that necessarily. We can do all of those things I've just shown you inside one virtual instrument, and that's Omnisphere, right? In later videos, what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll talk about the 2 different layers. But essentially, I'm going to leave it there because I think it's best to give you the big overview picture, and then you can dive into the kind of different videos that you want, because you might only be interested in synthesis, for example. Omnisphere's got incredible synthesis, but you could also just leave synthesis and only use the sounds that are in Omnisphere because it's got thousands of incredible sounds. So I'll leave it there and I'll see you in the next video.